Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Today's story will pull you in slowly, then hit like a freight train. Stay to the end. You won't forget this one. The ring was already in the blender when I heard her key turn in the door. I didn't press the button, not yet. That would have been theatrical, and I'm not trying to be poetic anymore. I'm just exhausted. Not in the I need sleep way. No, in the I'm done explaining myself to someone who already made up her mind kind of way. I stood in the kitchen, palms on the counter, her ring sitting upright inside the blender like a threat. I had cleaned the counter for this. I wanted it to gleam. I wanted her to see how spotless everything was while I was falling apart. She walked in humming. Actually humming. Like someone who didn't just emotionally euthanize the person she once promised to marry. Odessa. That's her name. But to be honest, it feels fake now. Like a name you make up when you want to sound cooler than you are. She didn't see me right away. She was too busy kicking off her shoes, muttering about how Wynn's car stereo still smells like cigars, and how next time, we should take mine. Next time. She said next time. I cleared my throat. She looked up. Stopped. Eyes darted to the blender. Oh, she said. Just that. Oh. I wish I could say I screamed, or sobbed, or did something that made a dent in her expression. But I just stood there like some unpaid extra in the movie of her life. You're being dramatic, she added, moving past me. She didn't even flinch. She walked to the fridge, pulled out almond milk, poured herself a glass, and asked me, if I still wanted to go through with the couple's therapy appointment tomorrow. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I had too much, and all of it felt useless now. So instead, I turned to the blender, pushed the lid down, and slowly pressed pulse. It didn't destroy the ring, obviously. Platinum's stubborn like that. But the sound it made, sharp, desperate, metal grinding against blades, was the closest thing to a voice I had left. She dropped her glass. It shattered across the floor. That was the first real emotion I saw from her in months. I didn't say a word. I walked past the broken glass, the spilled milk, the woman who ruined me, and left. I didn't go to a friend's. I didn't check into a hotel. I didn't need a break. I needed an ending. And I was about to find one. Because as fate would have it, she wasn't the only one hiding something. And what I discovered next, it made her betrayal look like child's play. I didn't drive far that night. Just far enough for her voice to fade from my memory. Far enough for the smell of her new perfume to stop clinging to my clothes. I parked in a gas station lot under a flickering sign, slumped behind the steering wheel like a man with nowhere to be and no one left to be it for. The car ticked softly, engine cooling, and I stared at the black dashboard like it might give me a reason not to unravel completely. And that's when I remembered it. The brown padded envelope in the laundry basket from 3 nights ago. She had thrown it in absent-mindedly, thinking I wasn't paying attention. But I saw the label. It wasn't addressed to her. It wasn't even her handwriting. And she had shoved it beneath a pile of towels like it burned her fingers. I told myself to forget it at the time. Don't be paranoid, Dorian. Don't be that guy. But now, after seeing her waltzing like a tourist in someone else's heartbreak, I had no reason left to be naive. So I turned the car around. By the time I stepped back into the house, the blender was still sitting where I left it, the ring untouched, and Odessa was gone again. No note. No shoes. Just silence and a cold draft that somehow smelled like betrayal. I went straight to the hamper, dug through the towels like a man possessed, and there it was. Same envelope. Still sealed. I shouldn't have opened it. Not legally. Not morally. But I wasn't a man thinking about laws or ethics anymore. I was a man who had just pulsed his own engagement ring out of existence while his fiancée discussed next time with another man. Inside the envelope was a single flash drive. No label. No paperwork. Just a small black USB, humming with potential damage. I took a deep breath, plugged it into my laptop, and clicked the single video file inside. The screen lit up with a shaky view of a hotel hallway. Low resolution. Grainy. But I recognized the carpet immediately. It was from the Lantern Pines Inn. The same place she and I had stayed during our second anniversary trip. The place she once called the most peaceful sleep I ever had. Only this video wasn't about sleep. I watched, jaw tight, as Odessa stepped into frame, laughing, holding someone's hand. Not Wynn. Not someone I recognized. Just some man in his 40s. Clean-shaven. Tan wedding ring. She kissed him in the hallway like no one would ever see. But someone had. Someone had recorded it. She whispered something into his ear, and they disappeared into room 212. The video ended with a slow zoom on the door as it closed. I stared at the screen, not blinking, not breathing. My body felt foreign, like it was someone else's grief I was wearing. I checked the file info. Timestamped 6 weeks ago. That was during the weekend. She said she was visiting her sister in Vermont for space and clarity. And the worst part? She brought back maple syrup for me, gift-wrapped. I sat on the floor of the hallway with the envelope beside me and the laptop still glowing like some smug digital demon. That was when I knew I hadn't just lost her. I'd been replaced. Quietly. Strategically. Like I was a job she wanted to quit without giving 2 weeks' notice. But the question that haunted me more than anything wasn't why she did it. It was who sent me that video. Because someone had known about her affair. Someone had been watching, recording, and they wanted me to see it now. That changed everything. This wasn't just heartbreak anymore. It was a trap I hadn't realized I was in. And the person who said it? They were just getting started. I didn't sleep that night either. I lay flat on the living room floor, eyes locked on the ceiling fan as it spun its lazy, endless circles, the only thing in the room still holding a routine. The video kept playing in my head on loop, frame by agonizing frame, like some kind of twisted lullaby. I kept wondering if she ever thought of me while she was with him. Did she flinch when he said her name the way I used to? Did she picture me opening the syrup, smiling like a fool? At 4:12 a.m., I started replaying the video again, not to punish myself this time, but to study it, to find something, anything, a reflection in the mirror, a detail in the background, anything that could tell me who had filmed it, because that was the thread now. And if I didn't pull it, I'd drown in my own questions. I paused on a strange flicker in the upper corner of the screen, barely visible, almost like a lens flare, except hotel hallways don't have lens flares. I enhanced the still frame the best I could with some software I barely knew how to use. What I saw wasn't clear, but it was unmistakable. A shadow, a figure, holding the phone from behind the corner wall. Not just anyone. They were wearing the same gray windbreaker I had seen before, in my own hallway 2 weeks ago. A neighbor, maybe. A stranger. Someone walking too slowly past my door while I was taking the trash out. I remember thinking it was odd at the time. The way he lingered, the way he looked at me, almost with pity. It wasn't just a coincidence. Whoever filmed that video knew me, knew us. And now they were slipping pieces of the truth under my door like poison. I didn't tell Odessa what I found. Not yet. She hadn't come home, anyway. At least not through the front door. Maybe she had started using the garage code again. Maybe she was staying at Wynn's. I didn't check. I didn't want to know. But I did want answers. And so I did the one thing I hadn't allowed myself to do all year. I called Brielle. She was Odessa's former best friend. The kind of best friend who gets cut off the moment she stops clapping for every bad decision. They had a falling out last winter. Something vague about boundaries. I never got the full story. All I knew was that Brielle stopped showing up, and Odessa never said her name again like she'd been erased. Brielle answered after the second ring. Dorian, she said, voice low. It was almost 5 a.m., but she didn't sound sleepy. Just cautious. I need to ask you something, I said. You finally saw it, didn't you? She replied before I could say another word. My blood turned to ice. You sent it. I whispered. A pause. No, she said slowly. But I know who did. There was a shift in her tone. A tremor. Not fear, not regret. Just wait. Like she'd been holding this back for months, waiting for me to get out of my own way. She's been seeing him since February, she continued. And that night at Lantern Pines? It wasn't the first time. He's not just some fling, Dorian. But I never heard the rest. Because at that moment, my door creaked open behind me. And Odessa stepped inside, holding her phone, still in her shoes, still smelling like someone else's night. She froze when she saw me. And I knew, just from the look in her eyes, she hadn't come to apologize. She had come to confess something I wasn't ready for. And it had nothing to do with the man in the video. She didn't speak right away. She just stood there in the dim hallway, one foot still halfway out the door, like part of her wasn't sure she should be here at all. The air between us was dense, like a storm building pressure before the thunder, and I couldn't move. Not even to hang up the phone, which was still open on my lap. I could hear Brielle's voice crackling on speaker. Dorian? Are you still there? But it felt like it was coming from another world. Odessa stepped forward. Slowly. She was clutching her phone so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. Her makeup was smudged. Her earrings were mismatched. And for the first time since this whole thing began, she looked afraid. Not guilty. Not ashamed. Afraid. I ended the call without a word. Brielle would understand. Whatever this was, it wasn't something I could process with another voice in the room. I need to tell you something, Odessa said, her voice thin and shaking, barely audible over the hum of the refrigerator. She didn't wait for permission. She just kept going. But you can't interrupt. Please. I nodded once mechanically. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where we used to eat cold leftovers and talk about which vacation spots were too cliché. The same table where she once cried after her first panic attack, and I held her until her hands stopped shaking. Now she was the one trembling. It wasn't supposed to get this far, she started, eyes darting around the room like the truth might be hiding behind the toaster. When? That was just a distraction. I needed noise. Something to drown out the real reason I left. You left? I asked, voice brittle. I didn't even know you were gone. Her mouth twitched, like the truth cut her as much as it cut me. I didn't mean to fall out of love with you, she said. I didn't even realize I had. But when I did, when I finally saw it clearly, I panicked. Not because I stopped loving you, but because of why I stopped. I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to feed the unraveling. But some dark part of me needed to bleed this wound dry. Why? I whispered. She looked up then, right at me. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she saw me. Not just as someone in her way. Not just as a mistake she hadn't cleaned up yet. She saw the man she'd been lying next to. The one who washed her dishes and folded her sweaters and saved her every leftover pizza crust because she always wanted it just in case. Because you started looking like him, she said. And my stomach dropped through the floor. Who? I asked, even though I already knew. My father. She closed her eyes, rubbed her temples. The quiet. The way you always tried to make everything okay, even when it wasn't. The way you disappeared inside your head when things got hard. That heaviness. I saw it in you. And it scared me. I sat there stunned. All this time I thought it was another man. Another life. Another set of desires I couldn't fulfill. But it was me. My softness. My sadness. The exact things I thought made me a safe place for her. They were the very things she had been trying to escape since childhood. You never told me that, I said. I didn't want you to carry my ghosts, she whispered. So I ran. And when running didn't work, I tried to bury it in people who made me feel loud and wild and careless. You mean when? No, she said, swallowing hard. Not just him. I stared at her. There were others? I asked, voice a raw whisper. She didn't respond. Didn't have to. I stood up slowly, legs numb. My hands were cold, like the blood had stopped circulating. I came back to give you the ring, I said. She looked confused. It's not here anymore, I added. I walked to the kitchen sink and turned on the faucet. The water rushed loudly as I reached into my pocket and pulled out the mangled remains of the ring, the one that had survived the blender, now warped and bent out of shape like our entire relationship. I was going to leave it here, I said, placing it gently under the running water. But now I think it belongs somewhere else. And I watched it swirl slowly toward the drain, not to be destroyed, but to be washed away, reduced to a weightless thing. She didn't say anything. She just stared at it like it was some artifact from a life she didn't recognize anymore. But I wasn't watching her anymore. I was watching the reflection in the window. Because for a moment, I could have sworn someone was standing behind her, outside, watching us. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. Like maybe the stress had pushed me into some hallucinated state where reflections bled into paranoia. But the shape was unmistakable. A figure, just beyond the glass, standing motionless in the dark like a misplaced shadow. I blinked and turned quickly, expecting to see, I don't know what, a neighbor? Some drunk kid playing a prank. But when I opened the door and stepped outside, there was no one there. Just a few damp leaves tumbling across the driveway and the faint hum of the streetlight above. No footsteps, no retreating shape, nothing. But the feeling didn't leave. That cold weight at the base of my spine, the sense that I had been seen, maybe even studied. Not the way she had been watching me lately with judgment or regret. This felt different, calculated. I stepped back into the house slowly and locked the door behind me. Odessa was still sitting at the table, unmoved, her eyes glued to the now empty sink. Did you see that? I asked. See what? She mumbled, without lifting her head. There was someone outside. She shook her head, as if too tired to play along with whatever she thought I was imagining. Probably just your reflection. But I knew what I saw. And suddenly the video, the anonymous envelope, the perfectly timed exposure. It didn't feel random anymore. It felt like someone was orchestrating this. Someone who wasn't finished yet. I didn't tell her. Not yet. There was no use trying to convince someone who already thought I was unraveling. Instead, I grabbed my laptop, shut the lid, and walked it quietly back to the guest room. I needed space. I needed answers. I needed time. But time wasn't what I was given. The next morning, I found an envelope under my windshield. No stamp. No return address. Just a white, perfectly clean envelope tucked beneath the wiper, like a casual afterthought. Inside was a single photograph. Printed. Old school. Glossy. The kind that develops slowly in a darkroom. The kind you handle with gloves if you want it to last. It was a photo of Odessa. From years ago, long before we met. She was leaning against a brick wall, laughing, her head thrown back. Next to her, a man I didn't recognize. Tall. Wide jaw. Army haircut. One arm around her waist. And on the back of the photo, written in bold, black ink. You don't know who she is. But I do. No signature. I drove straight to Brielle's apartment without calling ahead. She opened the door in sweatpants, clearly not expecting me, but she didn't look surprised either. Someone left this for me, I said, holding out the photo. She glanced at it and went pale. Not white, gray, like someone had reached into her chest and pulled out all her color. Where did you get this? She asked, voice barely audible. It was on my car. This morning. Do you know who he is? She stared at the image for a long time, then nodded slowly. His name was Pierce, she said. He's dead. Died in a fire 6 years ago. But before that, she hesitated. Before that, he was obsessed with her. I felt something shift inside me, a snap, like an old tree branch finally giving into pressure. Obsessed how? I asked. Stalked her. Broke into her apartment. She never told you? Brielle stepped back and looked at me like I was the last person to get the joke. Of course she didn't. She changed everything after that. Name, number, city. I staggered backward. You're telling me Odessa changed her identity? I'm telling you Odessa's been running for a long time, she said. You just thought you were the reason she kept her distance. But she wasn't pushing you away. She was looking over her shoulder. And now? I asked. Brielle hesitated. Her face turned to stone. If someone left you that photo, she said, then maybe she was right to run. And just like that, I was no longer the heartbroken fiancé piecing together a betrayal. I was someone caught in a story that had started long before I ever said I love you. And I had no idea how many chapters I'd missed, or how many were left. I couldn't go home that night. Not after what Brielle told me. I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot, staring at the photo again under the glow of a dying overhead light. Odessa's laugh in that image, wild, free, unguarded. It didn't match the woman I knew. Not even close. And the man beside her? His grip on her waist, the way he looked at the camera, it wasn't love. It was ownership. The air inside the car grew stale. I turned the ignition just to feel something alive around me, but I didn't drive. I just sat there, engine humming beneath my seat like a heart beating too fast. Odessa had lied about a lot. The cheating, the disappearing, the reasons she stopped loving me. But this was different. This was before me. This was a different life. A shadow I never saw coming. Eventually I drove back. Not because I wanted to. Because I needed to know what else she hadn't told me. When I walked in, she was in the living room. Alone. No lights. Just the glow of her phone screen lighting up her face and pulses. Her knees were tucked to her chest, her expression hollow. She didn't look at me when I came in. She didn't have to. I placed the photo down on the coffee table, face up. Pierce, I said quietly. That's his name, right? Her eyes met mine. Wide. Fearful. Not of me, of everything else. Where did you get this? She asked. Same place the video came from. Somewhere out there, someone's watching us. Tracking you. Feeding me pieces. She sat very still for a long time, then finally said, I thought he was dead. He is, I replied. At least that's what Brielle thinks. She didn't correct me, didn't deny any of it. Instead, she leaned forward and whispered, I think someone wants you to believe he's still alive. I felt my stomach twist. Why? Because he always knew how to get inside people's heads. He didn't just follow me, he followed my life. My friends. My family. Anyone close to me. He left notes. Gifts. Then fire. Fire. She nodded. His apartment burned down the week after I finally cut off all contact. Everyone assumed it was suicide. No body was recovered, but the place was ash. They ruled it accidental. And you didn't think that was suspicious? I thought it was over, she snapped, her voice cracking. I thought I could finally start again. With you. I paced, trying to process everything. My mind raced through every detail, every silence, every shift in her moods over the past year. It all fit. Too perfectly. Like a puzzle I never knew I was assembling. Then I remembered something else. The gray windbreaker. I turned to her. Did Pierce ever wear a gray windbreaker? She blinked. Slowly. Yeah. All the time. Said it made him invisible. Why? I didn't answer. I walked to the window, peeled back the curtain, and stared out into the night. Across the street, parked just beyond the edge of the streetlight's reach, was a black car I didn't recognize. Windows tinted. Engine off. No one inside. But something about it. It had that same unnatural stillness as the figure I'd seen outside days earlier. Like it was holding its breath. I pulled the curtain closed and turned back to her. We need to leave. Where? She asked. Somewhere he doesn't expect. She hesitated. He always expected everything. I walked past her and grabbed my laptop. Plugged in the flash drive again. Rewatched the video. But this time, I focused not on her, not on the hotel, but on the timestamp. There, buried in the metadata, was something I hadn't seen before. GPS coordinates. I copied them and plugged them into a map app. They didn't lead to the hotel. They led to a rural property 2 hours outside of town, one I'd never heard of. No listed owner. No photos. Just a pin dropped in the middle of nowhere. Why would the video be tagged with coordinates to there? I asked. Odessa's face went pale. That's where he took me. Once. Years ago. I stared at the screen and made a decision I didn't think I'd ever make. I'm going, I said. She shook her head. No. You don't know what he's capable of. I don't care anymore, I said. If he's alive, if he's not. I'm done being afraid of ghosts. I need to know who's doing this. Why? And how far they're willing to go. Odessa grabbed my arm. You won't come back the same. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And all I could think was, maybe that's the point. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't write a note. I didn't even tell Odessa goodbye. I just took the GPS coordinates, filled the tank, and drove into a morning so fogged over it felt like the world was holding its breath. The route led me north, away from the hum of the city, away from traffic, away from the version of me that had stayed quiet too long. As the sun rose behind the clouds, all I could hear was the faint rattle of something loose in the dashboard and the sound of my own heart, beating like it wanted to escape my chest. For the first 30 minutes, nothing felt unusual. Farms, empty roads, the occasional broken-down mailbox. But once I passed the last marked town on the map, everything started to shift. The pavement cracked. Cell service dropped. The trees thickened until they loomed on either side of the road like guards, closing in with every mile. I should have turned back. I knew that. But logic had stopped working days ago. Curiosity had a tighter grip on me than fear ever did. The GPS brought me to a gravel turnoff so narrow it looked like a deer trail. I hesitated before pulling in, heart thudding harder now, like my body knew something my brain didn't. The trees swallowed the car as I drove, scraping against the sides like fingernails. The signal cut out completely. No bars. No internet. No compass. And then, suddenly, it opened up. A clearing. Silent. Perfectly circular, like it had been carved by something too precise to be nature. And in the center of it, a house. If you could even call it that. The structure looked abandoned. Collapsing in some places. Rebuilt in others. Mismatched materials. Sheet metal where a porch should have been. Black plastic nailed over shattered windows. But the chimney still smoked. Someone was inside. I parked halfway into the tree-line, engine off. No movement. No birds. No sound. Just the slow curl of smoke rising from the house, like a warning. I got out slowly. Gravel crunched under my shoes, too loud in the silence. I walked forward. Each step felt like I was walking into the mouth of something that had been waiting for me. The front door was slightly ajar. I knocked. Nothing. I pushed it open. The air hit me first. Not just musty or old. It was thick, chemical, like burnt rubber and spoiled fruit. I gagged but forced myself to keep moving. Inside, The walls were lined with dozens of newspaper clippings. Some yellowed, some fresh. Some were taped neatly, others stabbed in with pins. Photos, names, police sketches. And in the center of it all, one picture, freshly printed, dead center. Me, outside my house, taking the trash out. Pinned beside it was another photo. Odessa, sitting at our kitchen table. She was smiling. I stumbled back, breath catching, panic flooding my chest in hot waves. That was 2 days ago. The photo was recent. Recent enough that it meant only one thing. He had been inside our house. I turned to leave, every instinct screaming now. But then I heard it, soft, deliberate footsteps from the back of the house. Too heavy to be an animal. Too slow to be casual. I grabbed the closest thing I could find, a rusted wrench sitting beside an empty generator, and backed toward the door. The footsteps paused. Then a voice, low and unfamiliar, came from the shadows. You came all this way. Don't you want to know why? My throat went dry. Who are you? I managed to say. The figure stepped out from the hallway. Mid-40s. Broad frame. Crooked nose. Pale blue eyes that didn't blink enough. He was wearing the same gray windbreaker I'd seen through the window. He looked at me for a long time. Then he smiled. Names are slippery, he said. But you can call me Closure. And then he tossed something at my feet. It clinked against the floor, a simple gold band. Her ring. The original. Still intact. Still whole. He stepped back into the shadows and said, She gave me everything. Even the parts you didn't know she had. Before I could move, the back door slammed. A second later, tires screeched in the distance. By the time I made it to the tree line, he was gone. Vanished. But he'd left the door open. And now, I knew one thing for sure. This was never about jealousy. It was about possession. And I was standing in the middle of a trap that had been set long before I ever said yes to Odessa's smile. I didn't chase the man in the windbreaker. I didn't call the police. I didn't even tell Odessa what he said. I drove straight home that day with the gold ring in my pocket, and the image of his face burned into my mind. The ride back was quiet. Not the kind of eerie silence I'd gotten used to. It was calmer. Like something had shifted, like I'd finally crossed the line between helpless and done. When I got home, Odessa was packing. Not frantically. Not as if she was running again. Just calmly folding clothes, stacking books into boxes, pulling her piano sheet music off the shelf. When she saw me, she didn't ask where I'd been. Maybe she already knew. Or maybe, finally, it didn't matter. I'm going to stay with my cousin in Arizona, she said, not looking up. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere without echoes. I nodded. Good. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the ring, and placed it gently on the coffee table between us. She froze when she saw it. Her lips parted, but no words came out. He left it, I said. At the house. She swallowed hard. That house. I never meant for you to find it. I know, I replied. But I needed to. For me. And I meant it. For the first time in months, maybe years, I meant what I said. Not out of anger. Not out of resentment. Just clarity. I didn't need apologies or explanations anymore. I didn't even need closure. I was closure. 2 days later, she was gone. She left me a short note. Handwritten. No drama. Just a thank you. For being safe when she needed safety. For giving her the quiet she didn't know how to live with. For loving her honestly, even when she couldn't return it. And then that was it. The house felt like a museum for a while after she left. I let it sit untouched. Dishes in the sink. Her favorite mug still on the counter. I didn't rush to erase her. I let the weight of everything settle naturally. Like dust on furniture, you finally stop pretending you'll polish again. Then, slowly, I started living. I got a dog. A rescue mutt named Pickle who insists on sleeping horizontally and drools when he dreams. I planted tomatoes. Badly. I started writing again. Small stories. Pieces of myself I'd buried while pretending everything was fine. And I forgave her. Not because she earned it, but because I deserved it. Sometimes, I still get an anonymous envelope in the mail. Just empty now. No pictures. No threats. Maybe he's still out there. Maybe he's gone. But I don't jump at shadows anymore. I watch sunsets. I laugh without guilt. I remember the man I was before I forgot how to breathe for someone else. And I'm still here. Thank you for watching this final part of our story on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever faced a moment where the truth came from the most unexpected place, we'd love to hear about it in the comments. Did a lie ever lead you to your own kind of peace? Did losing someone help you finally find yourself? Tap like if this story hit you deep, and don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Confessions for more true-to-life emotional journeys, where heartbreak doesn't always mean the end. Until next time, stay strong, stay honest, and never ignore the signs, even if they come in an unmarked envelope.